Welcome back to season 6 of The Deal. Thank you for all your support. Please subscribe and tell some friends if they want to get the best content, the best of the best in the real estate game, the blueprint for success. Today's guest is a living legend, Steven Shapiro, the co-founder and head of Westside Estates Agency, with his partner Kurt Rappaport, who is, we think, the most successful real estate broker in the history of mankind. He probably is. Steven Shapiro's right up there with him. You can find Steven at WEA Homes, WEAHomes.com. That's their boutique brokerage, or at Steven Shapiro Homes on Instagram. You can find it in the show notes. Steven's got some of the best guidance and advice you can hear. He's an expert and true professional at the ultra high end. He's dealt with many billionaires. He's at a level that people are aspiring to be at, but it's great that he breaks it down, kicks knowledge, talks about why he doesn't like big teams and why TV agents aren't relevant to what we do, and other interesting topics. School is in session in a big way. You don't get any more knowledgeable than Steven Shapiro. Enjoy it. Hey, welcome back to The Deal. Today I have a living legend, an icon in the real estate business, Steven Shapiro. Welcome. How are you, my friend?
Living is the key word there.
Yes.
I just had knee surgery on Friday, so
oh no,
I made it through. So I'm living.
What, did you try to do a reverse dunk and you blew out the ACL?
Right now I'm 2 sheets of paper above the ground is as far as I can get. My leaping ability is gone. I did dunk in high school, though.
So you don't have the vert. So for those in real estate that are in Los Angeles, they know exactly who you are. For those that may not be in real estate or may not be in Los Angeles, let me just tell you, Steven Shapiro has been in the game 40 plus years. He's the founder, head of Westside Estates Agency, which is a very unique, super ultra high-end brokerage. His partner and him, Kurt Rappaport, started it around 1999, and we'll get into that. But I just want to let people know that Steven's been in the epicenter of high-end real estate at the highest level for as long as I can remember. But let's start with where you're from. Speaking of basketball, didn't you hoop it up with Kobe at Lower Merion back east?
Yeah, I grew up in Lower Merion, Pennsylvania, which is just outside the Philadelphia city limits. And at that time, maybe it still is, Lower Merion was a very prestigious school. It was one of the best public schools in the country, and it was a great education. And I played varsity basketball for 2 years. Most of the time I played in practice, not in games. A few games I played in, and people might know Lower Merion by Kobe Bryant, who went there, and he eclipsed all my scoring records in his first game.
Yeah, there you go.
Whatever he scored, it was more than I had in my career. So
first quarter of his first game. All right, so you grew up back east. Tell me, what did your parents do for a living back east?
My mother was a homemaker for myself and my sister. My father owned 2 motion picture theaters, and that kind of taught me the entrepreneurial spirit. He worked 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, because the theater was open and operating every day. He never took a vacation until I was old enough to relieve him. And then ultimately, after I left, he sold the location of his last theater, which then became a McDonald's.
There you go.
Yeah.
Big Mac. So was that your first job, working at the theater, the family business?
My first job was my father giving me a vending machine in the theater, and I would buy the candy, fill the vending machine. At that time, the candy was 5 cents, and I would, count all the 5 cents, and then I would take it and buy more product, and that was my first job. Yeah.
It's amazing. All right, so let's talk. Did high school? After high school, did you go to college, or did you get right into the working world? And how did you end up in Los Angeles from Philly?
I went to Temple University. Graduated Temple University. It took me 6 years. I stopped to go to work and went to night school at St. Joe's, and then went back and graduated from Temple. Originally, I came to Los Angeles for a couple of years out of high school. Myself and three friends drove cross country and landed in Santa Monica at the beach and saw girls in bikinis, which then inspired me to have the desire to move to Los Angeles.
A little different than winters in Philly.
Oh God. So when I went to summer school at UCLA one year, and then the following year I worked at a car rental agency on Sunset Boulevard called Valcar Rent-A-Car, which was owned by one of the airlines. Did that for a summer, and then I graduated and moved out here the following summer. Worked for them at the airport location, managing the car wash facility before there was mitigation for sound on the airplanes. It was a terrible, terrible job. And then they offered me to open up two um, two rental car outlets in the Palm Springs area, but they didn't want to give me any increase in salary, and I didn't move out here to go to Palm Springs. So I went to a headhunter and was recruited by Connecticut General Life Insurance on a management training program, which taught me some great lessons for real estate, because I had to make 100 calls a day to them. And I had, very quickly learned, it taught me how to handle rejection, because that's, of those 100 calls a day, at least 98 were rejection, and the other two were putting you off. So I did that for, I don't know, it was so long ago and so unmemorable, but maybe a year, maybe 2 years. I don't know.
Yeah, hardcore sales training.
Yeah. Unlike the other agents, I was not on commission. I was on salary. So it was a little more palatable for me because I was getting paid to have the rejection.
Okay. All right. So what I'm gathering is you didn't come out to LA on a private jet or limousine with champagne, and weren't a trust fund baby hanging out with billionaires your whole life. You came out to LA like a young kid, just not knowing what to do, and School of Hard Knocks. You got some really good sales training and business training, grinding it out. All right. So how did you find your way to real estate, from car wash, insurance sales?
Very, very interesting, which people today don't do. I built a very strong foundation. I was out looking for a new apartment, and during that period of time, you found them in the LA Times. And the ads for the apartments were all glorious till you got to the actual apartment, and it had nothing to do with the description that you read in the LA Times. So having some background in the motion picture business, I developed a concept where we would take 35 millimeter color slides of the exterior and the interior of the actual units, and then offer a service to potential renters, where they would come into our office and they would give us their specifics. They need 2 bedrooms, they have a dog, they have a kid, whatever it is. And this is before computers. It was a card punch system. We'd punch the parameters into the card punch system. Cards would pop up, indicate what tray the slides were in, and then we would show them the slides. Then if they liked what they saw, we had an introductory piece of paper that introduced them to the manager on the premises, showed them the unit. If they rented a unit, we got 35% of the first month's rent. And it was great. At one point, we were handling over 200 people a day. And then the vacancy factor disappeared, and the owners didn't need the service anymore. So I segued into high-end leasing in Beverly Hills. The brokers during that period of time did not want to do leasing. So I opened a company called The Moving Experience, which did high-end leasing predominantly to motion picture people and recording artists who were coming to LA for a 3-month period or a 6-month period, didn't want to buy, but needed a place to live. And these people ultimately turned out to be people that wanted to stay in LA. And that's how I got into the sales market. And doing the leases taught me how to do many transactions instead of just focusing on a $3 million sale and waiting for that to happen or not happen. The leases happened, it created immediate income, but it also introduced me to the business managers for these people that you'd be desperate to work with if they were buying houses. So some of them ultimately became clients. And then in 78 to 80, I segued from the high-end leasing to sales. So the foundation was there from the rental business, which was called Scanapad, to the moving experience, then to sales.
Yeah, it's an interesting natural evolution, but it's for some reason you zeroed in on real estate and executed and it progressed. Now, this is 1980. I'm just curious, what were interest rates in 1980? Double digits?
Well, at one point, I bought a house where the interest rates were 18%, but you couldn't make a traditional sale then. All the sales were done with seller financing.
Owner financing. Yeah, okay. So that was the only
So
way.
it was called an all-inclusive deed of trust. So the seller would keep his low interest loan in place, loan you around that, and you made one payment to the seller who then paid the first trustee. And that's how you had to do business in those days.
All right, so now here you are starting in the sales business in LA, 1980. That's also interesting because LA is probably really starting to boom in the 70s and 80s and growing on every way. So tell me about some of the challenges of growing your business then, and how you went from starting 1980ish to 20 years later or so starting a high-end brokerage boutique.
As I think it was really 78. And I think what happened in 78 is I went into business with Jack Douglas and became his leasing arm when he had only a couple of offices. And I loved Jack. He was a great guy. But he would come to me and say, look, we're opening an office in the Palisades. I have to exclude you from the leasing there. I have to do this. I have to do that. And he had wanted to invest and buy properties that I came to him with. And I came to him with an incredible deal. It was a friend of mine who was one of my first leasing clients that owned a great property in Brentwood, 25 Oakmont, which is the old Martin Cadillac property. It was a Paul Williams house on 2.5 acres. It was great. And he was getting a divorce. And he called me and he said, I need you to sell this in 1 week before I file for the divorce. So I no longer own the house. And I don't care. I don't need any money down. I just need the title transferred and they can pay me in a year. So I go to Jack and I give him this unbelievable deal. And, he couldn't make the decision. So I wound up selling it to a client friend. And it was obviously, if anybody knows 25 Oakmont, it was a major mistake. It was $3 million then, which was the highest price paid west of the 405. But today it's worth, many, many, many multiples of that. And it was in a year or two worth much more than the 3 million. So as I saw him kind of back off on the concept of me bringing him deals, I had met Stan Herman because a lot of our clients were the same clients. I was dealing with Freddie Fields, who wanted to lease his house. Stan was dealing with Freddie Fields that wanted to sell a house. And he introduced me to Freddie once at a screening of one of Freddie's movies. We became close friends, wound up selling Freddie, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 houses over the years. And it was just, Stan was a very aggressive real estate broker who owned a lot of properties himself. And I learned a lot very quickly, and learned a lot about the clientele and what the needs were and stuff, and became his top person, even though he had the old school Thelma Orloff and Shirley Wells and this one and that one that were living legends. It was Stan Herman, Mike Silverman in those days. Those were the two high-end guys. So I did that for quite a while. Became half owner of the business. It became Stan Herman, Stephen Shapiro and Associates. He ultimately pretty much stopped working and just played backgammon in his office every day. And real estate started changing in the late 90s to a computer business. We used to have a book with a 3-hole punch listing sheet, and that's how you had folders that said Beverly Hills, Bel Air, and you would flip through it to see what houses were available. So as it became more computer oriented, he did not want to invest in the business, because I wanted, I said, we need a computer on everybody's desk, and we need to do this, and we need to do that. And he didn't want to do it. And we started, well, let's see, we're going to segue into something else. At the time, commission splits were 50-50.
Right. Very different than today.
Commission splits were 50-50. And Joyce Ray was working for Jack Hupp. And Harley Sandler was starting his brokerage. And he wanted to start Rodeo Realty, different than the Rodeo Realty that's next door here. And he offered Joyce 60 instead of 50. So she left Jack Hupp for Harley Sandler. And, that was the first of the commission wars.
Harley Sanders started. We're going to talk to Doug about that. He started the commission splits.
So that started the whole, recruitment of high-end brokers.
Yeah, the recruitment war and the splits now that are in the
and we started losing brokers, and Stan didn't want to get into the business that was happening. So I had suggested that he take half of the business, and we start to give equity to the agents so that they wouldn't leave. But he wasn't willing to do that. So, our top salesperson at that time was Kurt Rappaport, who's now my fantastic partner. And I said to Kurt, "You want to go and start our own business?" And he didn't hesitate. He said yes. So I think we each put up $100,000, and we opened Westside Estate Agency.
So this is late 90s.
We opened in 99, so probably 6 months before that. And I actually had another concept that would have ruled the world even today. I put together a group of the top brokers in town, and had a dinner at Morton's, and there were 12 of us. And I said, we control this business. Here's what we need to do. We need to do this like a law firm. We'll have senior partners, we'll have junior partners, we'll have associates, and we'll open a business, and we will own the business, period. And it was a great concept. It probably still is a great concept, but they were so reluctant to be business owners. They didn't understand entrepreneurship. They didn't understand the concept of it. So then Kurt and I went out on our own from there.
Yeah. So now Kurt had to be a young guy in 1999,
Yeah,
but he was already a top producer. He was
yeah.
already hit. So for those of you, I mean, I think everyone knows Kurt could be the most successful broker in the history of mankind. I mean, probably
Well, not could be.
he
He
is
is.
right. He is the most successful broker by a long shot.
Yeah.
So he started hitting it young. You were
Yes.
running the business with Stan Herman. So you guys connect. And was the concept? Were you guys already both dealing with high end at that point?
We were both dealing with high end, and the concept of the business is that we can't help everybody. So let's just help the higher end. So we weren't interested in representing condos for 250,000. So I think, and this is just, going back in time. I think we didn't want to deal with anything under 1 million or 2 million at the time. So that was our game plan.
So you opened your doors, and did you bring agents with you, or was it just?
There were a few that came with us. I think we had Lauren Judd, we had Richard Ehrlich, um, we had a couple of people. Stan Richmond started with us. I had hired him at Stan Herman Stephen Shapiro Associates, brought him along with us. So we had a few people. We probably had 6 or 7.
Yeah, all smart, great agents, and now all top dogs. All right, so talk to me about the progression of the business. Now, Westside Estates Agency is so unique. It is authentically a high end brokerage, some of the highest sales, the most sales in the high end, but very small in terms of the amount of agents. You guys have never looked to franchise or expand, or it's always been a tight, lean machine. I don't know if there how many brokers are there, but I know about a dozen of them that are all crushing it at a high level. Talk to me about what it looks like now.
Well, we expanded about 12 years ago to an office in Malibu because Kurt and I were doing so much business in Malibu. All of our clients in town wanted houses in Malibu. So we did that, and Kurt and I were basically selling beachfront property, and we hired some other agents that were covering the other areas of Malibu. I mean, literally, if I didn't sell 80% of the houses on Carbon Beach, I didn't sell any of them. I could go through a list. Once, when I was soliciting a listing with Mark Gruskin, I took the seller of the house and we walked down the beach, and I said, sold that one, sold that one, sold that one, sold that one, sold that one. It was pretty incredible, the amount of property. And then Kurt had Ellison as a client and sold like 11 houses on Carbon Beach.
Right. I mean, talk to me a little bit about that, because that's one of the great stories in the business with Kurt and Larry Ellison going around knocking on doors and buying one house after the next. Give for those who may not know, give us a quick story of what Kurt and Larry Ellison was.
I think what happened was somebody called Kurt and said, I've got a client I want to refer to you for a referral fee. And the client happened to be Larry Ellison. And then after he bought the first house, he had decided he wanted to acquire more houses. So I hit my clientele, and we did a lot of, I sold him one that was owned by a guy that we called the Tomato King. He was growing all the tomatoes in Mexico. And then Judy Israel had a double lot, and we were putting together these parcels that Ellison was buying. And it, well, no, there were gaps, but there were a lot that were together, and he's a patient man. So where there were gaps, he was hoping to fill the gaps. Um, and it just changed the pricing in Malibu to where it is this day. This was in the mid 2000s. This was in the mid 2000s. So where people thought he overpaid by paying 10 million, 10 million became a bargain. He set the market that everybody else would have to pay. So it was fun. So back to your question, I think between the two offices, we probably have 60, 65 agents, of which, 10, 12 do business, and others we're trying to break. And, they're taking our lower end properties, and, the higher end brokers are referring to the newer brokers to do the servicing for the properties that they don't want to handle themselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, as a business owner, brokerage owner, and an agent, talk to me about some of the challenges you and Kurt have balancing that out, managing your own business versus managing the brokerage business.
Well, I pretty much manage the day-to-day operations of the business. We have Colin Keenan now, who's our general manager, who's fantastic. So he takes a lot of the interaction with the agent deals off of my plate. But what was always our biggest challenge was recruiting other super high-end agents, because they were competing with us. So, they're competing for the same listings, which isn't always palatable when you're in the same company. And we treat ourselves to this day as a small family. So we didn't want, we didn't, we weren't interested in having cutthroat competition within the office between agent and agent. So we have been successful in taking mid-range people and moving them from 5 million to 10 million, or 10 million to 15 million, as opposed to taking agents that are already selling 15, 20, 25 and bringing them over. Plus, with Compass, screwing up the entire business by just acquiring agents by overpaying them. Nothing personal. Those high-end agents were induced to stay at their companies and be loss leaders for other agents. So it didn't behoove us to hire those people and give them, enormous commission splits and marketing budgets and assistants and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So, here we are, 2022 in September. Clearly, things are normalizing in the markets, transitioning in the markets. You are specifically focused on a very small market of high end, but talk to me about the high end market in September 2022, and how the transition and normalization has impacted the markets you're in.
Surprisingly, to me, the very high-end market has remained strong. We're still seeing people spending 20, 30, 40 million dollars. I am quite honestly a bit surprised. I felt that with the decline in the stock market, that maybe people wouldn't want to cash out their equities at a lower price than it was 6 months ago. And I also felt that from an optic point of view, maybe people that are running companies didn't want to see their employees see them buy a $50 million house, but it has continued. I mean, it has remained very, very strong in the high end. I think in the mid price range, we'll call that 5 to 10 to 15, the people have more time to look at houses. They're not selling as quickly. In the lower end, in the 2 to 5, we're still seeing a lot of activity, especially in the closer to 2. We're seeing a lot of generational buying, where wealthy people are buying those lower priced properties for their children, because we're somebody buying a $2 million house, getting $2 million in cash to buy a house. That's not the typical way you buy a $2 million house. So we're still seeing strength in that. When the pandemic started, I thought the business was over. I mean, literally, I thought it was over until it normalized. But we figured out new ways to sell real estate. we were selling it without open houses, with limiting 2 people per showing, uh, masks and gloves, and some places even made us wear booties and wiping everything down, and sellers being paranoid that somebody's coming in their house and they're going to die. So it was a strange moment in time. It was a strange moment in time, but we got through it. And like you said in the beginning, we're normalizing. This is, people are all upset with 6% interest rates. 6% was always considered reasonable to low, but people got spoiled at 3%. But the reality, the reality is that if you were getting a 3%, and I'll give you an example. I sold a place that I owned in Nashville, and my interest rate was 2.5%. Now I'm trying to do a 1031. So I have to equate my mortgage on whatever I identify at the same level as what I had there. And that same 2.5% that was costing me $1,500 a month is now going to cost me $3,000 a month. So it becomes very difficult to identify something that can throw off the same amount of positive cash flow. But you're looking, you have to tell your clients, and you have to understand that you're not looking to buy a property and sell it in 6 months or a year. You have to say, where's it going to be in 5 years or 10 years? You have to look for the appreciation in equity more than you're looking at the cash flow that's being thrown off.
Sure, and the lifestyle and memories, and it's not just
You have to look to be a more aggressive buyer. You have to aggressive, meaning price wise. You have to be able to say, this is all it's worth to me, no more.
it can't be just pay any price like it was
Right.
before.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest change. It's not just pay any price, and for average properties, I'm seeing you can't just name any price because no one's paying.
No, aspirational prices are done.
Right, but with blue chip locations and blue chip properties, which are still so few and far between, I'm still seeing astonishing high prices and no give. But it's the average and below average that I'm seeing sit in price reductions. And
Well, when you look at things selling and you go back and you look at history, they're not selling for what they were asking.
usually, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a new phenomenon.
yeah.
Let's switch gears and pivot here before I know you don't have a ton of time left, but I would love to hear your guidance, advice, and how to deal with ultra high net worth clients and the teams of business managers and lawyers and friends and entourage. You know, this is sort of a loaded question and it's a lot to unpack, but I would love to kind of get your take since that's been your expertise your whole career and you've seen it all. I'm sure there's some awful stories and some good ones too. But
Well, my thing, and I think our company's thing, is to be an individual as opposed to a team of 50 people or 100 people, where the team leader is going out and going on a listing appointment, and the seller never sees that person again. So I had when I was still at Stan Herman, Stephen Shapiro Associates, I was a star, and there were articles, and I was on the Today Show, and I was on CNN, and my head was a bit swelled. And in those days, you didn't have direct dial phone numbers, so I had a secretary who would field the calls, and she would say, "Stephen, Danny Brown's on the line," and I would say, "Well, I can't talk to him right now. Who's Danny Brown?"
I'm talking to Magic Johnson. I could tell Danny.
She picks up the phone. She calls me. She says, "Kirk Kerkorian is on the line."
Ah,
And I pick up the phone, and it's not Kirk Kerkorian's secretary. It's Kirk Kerkorian. And I don't know, I forget how he heard of me, but he did. And, he said, I think it was over Memorial Day or Labor Day or 4th of July. He said, I want to rent a house on the beach for 4 days. And I'm going, well, that is a tough task. And he says, well, I know you can do it. So I start calling people I know that own these houses, and I say, you want to take a great 4-day vacation? So Kirk says, let me pick you up. He's driving his own car. He has no security entourage. And, we get to talking about business during this period of time. And he said, you need to return every call within an hour. And if you can't return it within an hour, have your assistant call and say, can Stephen call you at 3 o'clock this afternoon? So they know that you've dealt with their call as opposed to just waiting to return the call at 3 o'clock. He said something very simple, but, has molded my real estate career. And it was, you have to make your client feel like they're your only client. And I have done that, and it becomes easier to do that with email and text messages. And, I've had so many people over the years say, you get back to me so quickly. It's amazing how responsive you are. So I learned to do that, much to the dismay of my wife, because I'm always on my iPhone. But those were two really important lessons from, at the time, one of the wealthiest, most important men in the world, and a genuine, amazing human being. So I found a house for him, and rented it for the 4 days. And the second day he calls and says, the housekeeper is here. How much should I pay her? And I said, I don't know, Kirk, give her $100. So he said, so if I give her $250, it's okay? I said, you give her $250, she's going to be in another world. Then he calls me after the 4 days are up, and he says, I'd like to rent that house for long term. So I call the guy that's in there, and he says, well, if he'll give me $25,000 a month, he can have it for 2 years. And Kirk says, great, but I want the ability to remodel the master bathroom and put in a new kitchen. And this is Kirk's deal. He would buy something, sell it, rent it back from the person he sold it to, then buy it back, remodel it. It was a trip. He was amazing. It was a great learning experience. And at the time in town, he lived on West Wanda. He lived on West Wanda in like a little 1,000-square-foot place above the garage. He was so real and basic and not spoiled. He knew I knew Linda Evans because Linda was married to Stan Herman. And at one point he asks me to, maybe he wants to be fixed up with her.
Fix me up with Wonder Woman. Linda Evans is Wonder Woman.
No, not Wonder Woman. Dynasty.
Dynasty.
Linda Carter was Wonder Woman. So then he calls, he says, better yet, don't, because I don't like publicity and everybody's taking her picture. So if we go out to eat, there's going to be paparazzi taking pictures. So call it off. Those are the Kirk stories. So I did a lot of business with him over the years.
Incredible lessons. Call people back within an hour, or have someone in your office let them know when to call you back, and treat each client like they're your only clients. If we all did that, our business would be much better. I love it. Any other words of wisdom for agents that are trying to break in or grow their business? Or
I mean, the main thing is to build a foundation. Don't get your license and expect to sell a $5 million house. Sell $1 million house. So the most important lesson that I learned when I started doing the leases was to be comfortable doing the transactions, to be comfortable dealing with the people on the buyer's end or the seller's end that were managing the transactions. You have to know what you're doing, and you don't necessarily know, well, not you don't know the day you're getting in the business. It takes a long time to know the answers to all the questions and objections that are going to come up. And it's still like I just don't like the massive team approach. If somebody's got 2 or 3 people that they are trusted on their team, great. But when you have, I'm not going to mention names, but when you have people that have 100 people or 80 people, it's lost. You're losing the personal nature of the business. And at the end of the day, it's a personal business.
Yes, very good point.
Yeah.
I agree, 100% agree. What does your crystal ball tell you moving forward in the real estate world? How is things looking in the next 12, 24 months, 36 months?
First thing that tells me there's going to be a lot of people out of the business. You know, a lot of people come into the business after watching the reality shows where it makes making money look very, very easy. There are no inspections, there's no loans, there's, it's you, you show the house and it's sold and here's the key.
I'm
So
still waiting for that. It's been 20 plus
yeah,
years.
they get into the business without a real understanding of what the business is, and it's a shame. So that will weed out people that aren't going to do business, which I think there are too many people chasing too few properties. So I think that's good. The other thing that I don't like, which is a pet peeve of mine, is okay. A pet peeve of mine is how these, again, I'm going to call them TV brokers, decided to break everything down to price per square foot, which is great if you're in a vertical market. If you're in a horizontal market, if there's no house on it, the land is worth a lot of money. So you can't say it's selling for $2,000 a square foot when the land under it is worth X millions of dollars with nothing on it. But it was the easy way out. And unfortunately, it appears that it has been adopted. So I have to spend a lot of time saying, don't give me price per square foot unless you're talking about a condominium.
Yeah, it's irrelevant otherwise. And even in the condo, where does the view face? What's the floor plan?
Yeah, exactly. But at least there's reference.
I mean, it's ridiculous because it's like you could be facing a wall with no view. You could be facing the ocean in the city.
I had a listing for $32.5 million on 2.5 acres. And there was only thing on it was a 1,200 foot pool house. So what's that price per square foot?
25 million, 35 million per foot.
It's ridiculous, right? So the value was the land, not the structure that was on the land. We have to pull back. It's very simple in the flats of Beverly Hills to determine what the price per square foot of land is. So you know that if you're on a 15,000 foot lot, it's worth X. And then you have a 5,000 foot house on top of it. Is it a new house? Is it an old house? What's the cost to rebuild that house? Is it $500 a foot? So you take $500 a foot times 5,000 feet, that's 2.5 million. You put it on top of the land value, and that's the value of your property, not price per square foot. Pisses me off. You're getting me upset now.
I'm firing you up. I love it. What other pet peeves we got? Let's keep going. TV brokers, price per square foot. You're hitting all my favorite topics.
So, and the other thing that pisses me off, because as brokers, you have only one thing to do, and that's to sell a house. And when I show a listing, I'm there half hour, 20 minutes before the appointment. What if the people show up early? I want to be ready. I want the house prepared. So it really pisses me off when I show up with a client and the broker shows up after my client and I show up. Okay. So That upsets me no end. Brokers
I've
should
been
be,
guilty of that at times. I gotta admit,
well, don't
it's
do it
terrible. It's terrible. I hate
again.
it too. It's annoying.
And back to the assistant thing. I was showing a house in the flats of Beverly Hills, 700 block. It was a $17.5 million house. And my client, my buyer, was the chairman of the board of the largest legal firm in the world. Heavy duty guy. And the broker sends an assistant at the first showing. And my guy, who's a smart, calculating guy, how many zones of air conditioning? Oh, I don't know. Is there a central music system? I don't know. How many square feet in the guest house? I don't. He looked at him and said, "Why are you here? Well, what is your point? To unlock the door? We don't need you to unlock the door. We need you to answer questions." And that is another problem with the assistant issue.
Yeah. Yeah, which you see more concentrated on teams and big teams. But yes, the assistant shows up with no information. It doesn't help. Doesn't help unless you're opening doors.
If I'm putting somebody else on a listing, they're coming with me on the listing appointment. They're learning about the house as I'm learning about the house, so that they have a broker's awareness of what question a buyer might ask, or what details you representing the seller might want to share with the buyer without the buyer asking. A monkey can unlock a door if you train them, and that's what's happening a lot of times.
I agree. I don't like that either. You need to have a basic competence level of understanding. And if something's complicated or it's curveball question, sure, we'll get back to you. But you got to know the basics, the fundamentals. Yeah. I think that's one of the big issues, and your examples are hitting on it. But the fundamentals. So many brokers don't have the fundamentals. They jumped in, they sold a big house, they made a big commission, and they never learned the fundamentals. And
well, when I try to secure a listing, and fortunately, I'm at the point in my career where I only want to work with people that I like or houses that I like. So, but the accumulators of listings they're going to face conflicts. Here's your $5 million house you have a listing on, and somebody wants to see it at 11 o'clock, and somebody else calls and wants to see the $20 million house at 11 o'clock. Guess what's happening? The $20 million house is being shown, not the $5 million house. So the accumulators are getting 3 new listings, expiring 2, selling 1, losing another. So they're not in the business of concentrating on your house. They're concentrating on their business as opposed to your business. So there is an opportunity for agents who want to be the hands-on professional representing a seller, as opposed to, so what I like to do when I go on a listing, I don't always get the answer, but my question is, who else are you talking to? So if they tell me they're talking to, again, I'm not going to mention any names, but you can interpolate the names that I'm thinking of. I'm saying, well, they sell a lot of houses, but they also don't sell a lot of houses, and they definitely have a lot of conflicts. So if somebody wants to see your house at the same time a more expensive house is being shown, you're getting a less experienced person in to show your house, if at all. So I think it's important. If you represent 5 properties and they're good properties and you can get them priced right and you have a relationship with the seller, you can make a lot of money. You don't need to have 30 to accomplish the same thing you can accomplish with 5. So be a specialist as opposed to a generalist.
Yeah, I love that, because that's been my business model. I've never like the team approach, but it's been this trendy thing and it's an ego thing and it's smoke and mirrors. But the opportunity is for sharp knowledge brokers who can give white glove service, attention, and competence. You could really flourish and be very profitable, because I've had these discussions with people about teams, and there's teams losing their ass right now because they have 30, 40 brokers and marketing expenses for 50 listings. They're not necessarily very profitable. Some are, of course, and they'll make some big sales. But bottom line is there is an opportunity, and doing it with customer service and attention, like you're saying, and being knowledgeable, that's a good way to make a lot of money in this business. I love that. I love that approach. Well, look, I got to get the caravan. So do you. Anything else you want to? Anything you want to close with? We can have a venting session, part 2.
Yeah, I think I think you have to be realistic. You have to know your business. You have to be smarter than the person you're up against. You have to understand that sales are overcoming objections. And if you're not able to overcome the objections, you're not going to sell anything. And people will disappear from the business that aren't professionals. So it's better to take your time and develop a foundation. And I still think that maybe leasing is a way to get into the business. You get paid right away. You can do 3, 4, 5 leases a month and generate significant income, and then service those people as if they're buyers, and one day they will turn into buyers, and you've got them locked in.
I think that's great advice.
Foundation.
Well, I'm glad we've had some time. You're still living and still a legend. Thank you for sharing. Sorry about the technical difficulty, but anytime, open door for you to come back. It's so fun hearing you talk reality. And
what did you think? What did you think of the Inman luxury thing?
I don't get much out of it. I enjoyed your talk. I enjoyed Gary Gold's talk, a few others. But to me, it seems like it's really a fluff festival for TV agents to get more PR. And it's not. So guys like you and I who have knowledge, like, what the heck are we doing
exactly
here?
What it turned into.
It turned into the agents that I'm talking about, the TV agents or the teams or the giant teams. I mean, I'm listening to, I forget which one, talking about how they take everybody to Paris and they take this and they do that. Well, what about your clients that are still in Los Angeles trying to buy and sell houses?
Your 50 listings.
It made, I had to leave.
And all,
I left at lunch. I couldn't, it just became all the same.
Yeah, well, I really enjoyed hearing you talk, and Gary Gold is always, stand-up comedy and fun and interesting, and a couple others. But yeah, for the most part, come on, I don't need to sit here and listen to a TV agent tell me how to build a business. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. All right, I got to get to work.
You're awesome. Great to see you.
Thanks, Danny.
We'll see you soon.